B. Will, with, promise, agreement, request contrary to fact. Number 1. Future plan, promise, or agreement will. I will come in at 10 to 4. This is a defined appointment. I will do whatever you advise, Mrs. Liu said to the doctor. Number 2. Continuing future activity. Will plus be plus ing. At midnight, Mrs. Liu will be reading her assignment. Number 3. Completion of a future activity. Will plus have plus past participle. By midnight, the effect of the drops will have worn off. Number 4. Polite request for action in the immediate or distant future. Will or would. Will you please close the door? Would you please close the door? Will you please lock the door when you come in? Would you please lock the door when you come in? Number 5. Present and past contrary to fact statements. Would. If Mrs. Lowe didn't have a headache now, she would be reading her assignment. If Mrs. Lowe didn't have a headache, she would read her assignment. If Mrs. Lowe hadn't had a headache, she would have read her assignment. C. Shall, should, ought. Advisability, obligation, expectation, chance. Number 1. Affirmative question of advisability. First person, immediate or distant future. Shall or should. Shall I put you down for 10 to 4? Should we go to Europe next summer? Number 2. Negative question of advisability, present or past. Should. Shouldn't we be doing our homework? We aren't. Shouldn't Jack have done all the problems? He didn't. Number 3. Statement of advisability, all time and future. Should or ought. We should be careful crossing streets all time. We ought to be careful crossing street. Mrs. Liu should see a doctor as soon as possible. Future. Number 4. Unfulfilled obligation. Present and past. Should or ought. I should be reading my assignment. I'm not. I ought to be reading my assignment. I'm not. Fulfilled obligation, recurrent and past, cannot be expressed with modal. Bill is obliged to visit his mother every other weekend. He does. Professor Allen was obliged entertain the new professor, Mr. Miller. He did. Number 6. Expectation or likelihood. Should or ought. It is 8 o'clock. The guests should be arrived soon. George is bright and he works hard. He ought to be well. Number 7. Chance happening as a condition. Should. Should you see Mr. Allen? Give him my regards. If you should see Mr. Allen, give him my regards.
D. May, made, permission, conjecture. Number 1. Permission, present or future, may. For example, Mrs. Lowe asked, "May I leave at 3:45?" Her instructor said, "You may leave at 3:45. At 3:45, her instructor said, "You may leave now." Number 2. Past permission cannot be expressed with modal. For example, Mrs. Lowe had permission to leave classes early. Mrs. Lowe was allowed to leave classes early. Number 3, conjecture about a present situation, may or mayn't. For example, Mrs. Lowe may need classes. Mrs. Lowe may need classes. Number 4, conjecture about a present activity, may or mayn't plus ing. For example, George may be writing to his father. Bill may be cleaning up his mother. Number 5, conjecture about the future, may or mayn't. Mrs. Lowe may be absent tomorrow. Mrs. Lowe may be absent tomorrow. She may not come to school. She may not feel well. Number 6, conjecture about the past, may or mayn't, plus have, plus past participle. Now, for example, Professor Baker may have lost his watch at the golf club. Professor Baker may have lost his watch at the golf club. E. Must, necessity, abstention, deduction. Number 1, necessity, present, future, and all time. The lecture must begin right now. Mrs. Lowe must leave at 3:45. Student must read their assignment. Number 2, abstention is seconded by the negative. We must not neglect our eyes. We must not break the law. Number 3, lack of necessity cannot be expressed with a modal. Have to is used instead. John doesn't have to have any eye exam. She doesn't have to wear glasses. Number 4, past necessity is also expressed with have to. Science must has no past form. Mrs. Lowe had to leave classes early yesterday. Number 5, deduction about a present situation or action. Must plus symbol or must plus be plus ing. Mrs. Lowe is frowning her head must. She gets trouble headache. She must need glasses. Number 6, deduction about a future event includes must plus the future marker going to. It is getting very dark out. It must be going to rain. Number 7, deduction about the past, simple or and continuous. Must plus have plus been. The doctor wasn't free when Mrs. Lowe arrived at the health. He must have been seeing another patent. He must have been very busy.